see. Just let's go. So let's dance now. It is my turn. Just won't work you out. I am ready for your action. Just won't work you out.
It's another beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is Rubbin Minds. You're welcome. My name is Ebute, and thanks a lot for joining us on the show today. I don't know what word to use to describe the past week in Nigeria, but a lot of tension and nerves and I don't know, a lot of things that we've been talking about on this show for months and months and months now. Looks like we're getting to a point where things we overlooked as a nation has gotten to a point where it's starting to bite us in our behinds. And the issue of the independent people of Biafra has gone beyond one man and is now becoming a serious national issue. And a lot rests on how the federal government will react to handling the entire situation. And there's so much to talk about. There's a lot to, to look into in this particular situation. And of course, there's a lot of appeal coming from a lot of well-meaning Nigerians, hoping that this does not go any further than it already has, hoping that we do resolve this as quickly as possible. Nigeria has way too many issues, and breeding tension shouldn't be one of them over things that can actually be discussed in an open and honest way. But I have here with me Leonard Ebute, who's a regular on the show, and we have a lot to talk about today. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Ebuka.
The IPOB, IPOB, or whatever people call them, we hear the Nigerian military declare them a terrorist group this week, and we don't know if they have the powers to do that, or if it has to come from the president. But the issue is that it's gotten to that point where the group has now been seen as an enemy of the state completely. Did we have to get here? And people have said Nnamdi Kanu should have been rearrested when he started, going against the bail conditions that he was granted, and they let him breed what has now become almost unmanageable.
Well, I come from the perspective that I'll leave the lawyers to argue the legality or otherwise of that declaration, the proscription of IPOB as a terrorist organization. But if we go by example, we know that from different parts of the world, and even constitutionally speaking, from the little research we've done, we do not think that it is the office of the defense headquarters that should be making that kind of prescription. I also think that from a political point of view, the right approach would be to de-escalate the situation, not to escalate it by this, in my view, hasty prescription, as it were. That said, like I said, I leave the lawyers to argue that. I would like to talk a bit more about the efficiency or effectiveness of such prescription. I mean, Al-Shabaab was proscribed, Boko Haram was proscribed, Hamas proscribed, and all the terrorist organizations in the world have been proscribed. It hasn't stopped them from operating. The logic is that it serves as a deterrent to new entrants, but that has not been the case from empirical observation. The real issue is with how that relates to the rights of the individual. You see, the thing with prescription is it illegalizes an individual because of his association, not because of his action. So, for example, if IPOB is declared a terrorist organization, I become a terrorist just by being a member of IPOB, even if I have not done anything wrong. And I think that for the activities of IPOB, no matter how disruptive it has been, it is incomparable to the activities of headsmen. It is similar to how El-Rufai proscribed the Shiite organization in the north as a terrorist entity. These are premature moves, And so we really need to sit back and say, what is the best way to address tension situations like this?
Some would argue, sorry to cut you in there, some would argue that, okay, do we need to get to a situation where a group then ends up killing people before we actually stop them? Isn't this a way of stopping things from getting any worse?
Yes, but you don't stop things by giving them a name they don't deserve. You can't call a dog a hyena just because it needs to be a hyena before you can kill it. Okay? It is a suppressive, it is a secessionist organization. That's exactly how bad it is. It has not turned violent. It is not exactly following the global standards for the global processes for achieving secession. It is missing out on all of those lines. I think the basis for agitating for Biafra is irrational. I think it's illogical. I think the process Nnamdi Kanu is by which Nnamdi Kanu is trying to achieve Biafra is juvenile, and he's incompetent to achieve his agenda, because if we compare his movement with that of Ojukwu was a leader, a clear leader of the East. He is not. He is not even discussing with his governors. His governors are at variance with him ideologically. His political leaders are at variance with him ideologically. And he's gathering disgruntled youths to make if you like, a nuisance of himself, because he has a voice that is a little bit louder than most of us have. Okay? So that's what I think about the movement as it is and the approach it is taking. However, the reaction of the state should be a little bit more mature. It should be a little bit more deliberate. It should be a little bit more thorough, you know, to, first of all, primarily de-escalate the situation.
How do they do that?
So, if Nnamdi Kanu, for example, has flaunted his bail terms, right, I expect that the normal legal course should normally take its course. Now, if the government of the day is saying Nnamdi Kanu is at large and we want him arrested for having flaunted his bail condition, that is a very clear message. That has nothing to do with IPOB. And people do have freedom of association, call it by whatever name. You see, the reason given by the military for even proscribing them is funny. There isn't any clear indication of direct violence, arms carrying, or anything like that. There was a case of people fighting with a police, a military person trying to get her gun and stuff like that. Armed robbers do that every day on the streets, and armed robbers are armed robbers, not terrorists. So we have to be careful with, you know, demonizing the organization just because we want to have a good reason for clamping down hard enough on them. So I think the approach is to isolate Nnamdi Kanu as a culprit and every other member of IPOB that have committed actions violating the laws of the land, not directly attacking an association that has a legal right to freedom of association and freedom of expression.